Before we begin, I need to address something first. It was brought to my attention that I had overlooked the fact that while I have made it clear that Superman's humanity as Clark Kent has been diminishing since year 1, he has still been expressing human emotions such as anger, contempt, and disappointment, meaning that Superman's humanity has not gone diminished. It is still there, but it's not the same thing as it used to be before, as he is not the same person as these other versions of Clark Kent. As for who he has become now, Superman has slowly over the course of the last 5 years embraced the worst aspects of humanity. He is still humane, but not in the good way, and his yes men are beginning to notice that here in year 5. Now, year 5 of Injustice is 41 issues long when you count in the annual issue. I can only assume the length being due to the laundry list of setups that still have not been done in reaching the video game's main settings. The length, however, serves as a happy accident in fixing the problem I have brought up with year 3 and year 4. In stretching year 5's pacing so that it feels like a year-long event, although the lack of holidays breaks the illusion a little. But it is understandable why the characters wouldn't be celebrating them, besides one character's birthday. Due to the video's length, here are timestamps to the book chapters in the story that you can also find down in the description. In case you don't have the time to watch this video on one go, these timestamps will act as your bookmarks for picking up where you left. Isä, tämä on just sitä mitä pyysit viime videolta, joten sanon sulle vielä kerran suoraan. Also, as Year 5 story ends by bridging the comics event to the video game, this video will be ending similarly when we reach the end of issue 40. To those of you committed to going through this whole thing from beginning to end, I hope you brought snacks, drinks, and in case I managed to portray certain moments the way I intended, a box of tissues. As I won't be saying this at the end of the video, I'll say it now. Remember to like the video, comment your thoughts and criticisms below, share this video to widen my audience, and tap that subscribe button to make this number go higher if you haven't already. And now, let's go! The 5th year of Injustice opens from the aftermath of Year 4 annual issue, in the underwater Supermax where Plastic Man broke everyone out of. Most of Superman's side, from Cyborg, The Flash and Hal Jordan, are actively hunting down the at-large supervillains, while Wonder Woman is crying to her mommy about how their gods left Earth. Batman on his end approaches the rogues, who have a no harm will come to women and children code of conduct that Batman sees as good enough to recruit them to his side. While Superman is helping the Flash capture a group of villains just by being present, Doomsday makes his first real appearance in the series in landing to Earth from space, and Superman is so forced to focus on fighting the indestructible monster. After making sure that the villains won't run away and calling a medical evac to Flash who got injured in Doomsday's landing, Superman begins to fight Doomsday in a combat that leads them from the middle of nowhere to Gotham Harbor, where Bane is waiting. And since Bane is included in the roster of fighters in the first video game, Bane jumps in to assist Superman in beating Doomsday in order to prove his worth as an asset to Superman's regime. Bane's introduction is put on a brief hold, during which Superman flies to help Hal and Cyborg by throwing the overpowered Parasite into the sun. With that handled, Doomsday is taken to Lex Luthor to be lobotomized, and the rest of the regime is forced to accept that Bane is one of them now, because Superman says so. This is also the part where Hawkgirl expositions that her recurring absences are because she keeps coming from and going to Planet Thanagar here and there. And Year 4's other cliffhanger shows up landing into Germany. As the regime, yeah, let's call Superman's side that from now on, continues trying to round up the at-large supervillains, Wonder Woman decides to confess her feelings to Superman without straight up saying it. And with this page, you might as well change the dialogue in the speech bubbles into "no sex as long as we are working with criminals." Which reminds me, what happened to that guy who used to make an average comic series out of Injustice back when Year 1 was coming out? In Germany, Year 4 cliffhanger, aka Bizarro, is discovered by an old man who probably has lived under a rock for the last 5 years. Because when he gives the naked, deformed clone a red blanket to wear, The old man recognizes it in his appearance as Superman and doesn't fall on his knees to appease the One Earth dictator. This kind old man is revealed to be a tailor, who takes Bizarro to his home, offers him soup to eat, and gives him a handmade Superman costume, with the S-shield reversed, so Bizarro can look at his reflection and see the S-shield the right way. In Gotham, Catwoman tries to negotiate with the Penguin to get his criminal organization to align with Batman's insurgency. Yep, let's call it that too. But Bane had come to the Penguin first and set up a trap to capture Catwoman with the assistance of Killer Frost. Knowing how she is close to Batman, Bane decides against reporting Catwoman's capture to Superman and takes her elsewhere to be used as bait to lure Batman out of hiding. Penguin, who got left behind, snitches about Catwoman's capture to Batgirl, who reports it back to Batman, who this way learns about the regime's recruitment drive taking in criminals too, which, considering how little 5U93R pills both sides have, is the natural next best thing in their power struggle. Before Catwoman's capture leads to anywhere, Issue 5 still covers how the no longer Robin Damian Wayne slaughters ninjas sent by Ra's al Ghul to bring him back to the League of Assassins, and the revelation that Superman sent Bane to Gotham in order to smoke Batman out of hiding. And since Catwoman was never taken into custody, Wonder Woman repeats her "no sex as long as we are working with criminals" insinuation to Superman. Harley Quinn works on the streets and learns that Bane has captured Catwoman, while Barbara and Kate come across Bane's YouTube challenge for Batman to come face him at Wayne Manor or Catwoman dies. Bane and Killer Frost wait in front of the rancid and abandoned Wayne Manor, with an audience waiting outside the gates. Batman eventually shows up, with Batwoman and Harley standing behind him, and begins to fight Bane, by evading Bane's attacks, while Batgirl traces Bane's streaming signal to where Catwoman is held. While Batgirl goes to find Catwoman and rescue her, the Batman that Bane is fighting is revealed as a mirror copy created by Mirror Master, and as Bane and Killer Frost move to demand Batwoman and Harley to reveal where Batman is, Superman and Wonder Woman show up to demand where Catwoman is. Batgirl meanwhile finds Catwoman at Killer Croc's mercy, who by the way promised to Plastic Man in behalf of the other villains to focus all their bad guy stuff on Superman, and is currently indirectly working for Superman. And then the real Batman arrives to the Wayne Manor by driving the Batmobile into Bane and Killer Frost's back. And this does not kill them, just knocks them out for Batman to take on Superman while Batwoman and Harley take on Wonder Woman. It's not really a fight, but rather they need to buy time for Batgirl to get Catwoman rescued from Killer Croc, which gets done by Batgirl giving Catwoman a 5U93R pill that gives her the strength to free herself and help Batgirl beat Killer Croc before they escape. Before Batgirl gets to report about Catwoman's rescue, Batman and Superman's battle banter keeps beating the dead horse of why Batman opposes Superman's murderous regime, and Superman justifies his actions on the Joker deserving to die, a point which I plan to talk more about in the Year Zero video. Once Batgirl's message gets through, it's Leadline, Smoke Bomb, and Mirror Master's help in getting Batman, Batwoman, and Harley out of there. Return to their Alaskan bunker. Batman addresses his people in telling them that in moving forward they need to start getting more people on their side. Catwoman, on the other hand, after her experience in being used as a lure to draw Batman out, pulls Bruce aside and speaks her mind to him. As I briefly brought up in the Year 4 video, Selina's morale has begun to diminish along with her faith into the insurgency's chances to win against Superman's regime. And because unlike Tom King's Catwoman, this version of Selina genuinely loves Bruce, and she doesn't want to see him die fighting a losing battle. So she asks him to stop and go live like their Dark Knight trilogy counterpart somewhere, knowing very well he can't do that. On planet Thanagar, we are shown the Qatar Hall version of Hawkman learned that his wife Shiera, aka Hawkgirl, is not there as the good wife Qatar expects her to be, and is instead on Earth working for Superman's regime. This causes Hawkman to overreact and charge towards Earth while coming across like the poster child of toxic masculinity. The entirety of issue 8 drives this point home by being dedicated to showing how Hawkman arrives to the Hall of Justice and instead of treating Hawkgirl as his equal partner and spouse, as I understand a marriage is supposed to work, but instead, Qatar demands Shiera to return to Thanagar just because he says so. When Shiera tells him that she is free to do as she chooses and asks Qatar to return when they can speak as equals, Qatar responds by grabbing a hold of her arm and then attacks Cyborg when he steps in. And this conflict then escalates into Wonder Woman stepping in, throwing Qatar out of the Hall of Justice, where Shiera demands they settle this in the way of Thanagar, aka by dueling in the sky like barbarians. I'll just cut to the end by revealing that Hawkgirl wins and Hawkman loses, humiliated and sent back to Thanagar. Meanwhile, the rogues attack Superman's regime army outposts around the world, destroying resources and causing a shortage to the 5U93 art bills production. While Superman and his regime respond to the attacks, Bizarro sees them also happening from Germany, and thinking he is Superman as seen by the old man taking care of him, decides to take the job in responding to them as well. The rogues regroup in the central city outpost to finish the job, where Bizarro confronts them, and unfortunately also ends up killing half of them, Heatwave and Weather Wizard, when they call him not Superman too many times. Golden Glider and Mirror Master only end up surviving Bizarro's angered Heat Blast thanks to Golden Glider's powers in making them intangible, and the Trickster, who was not really there with the other rogues, but rather trying to keep up with them, by managing to take an advantage over Bizarro's slow brain processing to convince they are friends, which causes Bizarro to take Trickster away with him, while Golden Glider drags Mirror Master away as well. The loss of Heatwave and Weather Wizard leads to the rogues leaving Batman Insurgency, and also ends up being the last straw for Catwoman, who leaves the Insurgency with them. Bizarro and Trickster fly around the world to find a tolerable place where the Trickster tells Bizarro how Superman's regime rules the world, and Bizarro, in believing to be Superman, understands it to be his regime, to which Trickster is also forced to tell him about the real Superman and call him an usurper needed to be dealt with. Meanwhile, Superman's regime is hunting down the other villains while also trying to look into Bizarro. Unlike many other characters shown in the Injustice series so far, Bizarro is this way revealed as a debuting character, who has not existed in the continuity previously. And considering how the Injustice version of Lex Luthor, who in most other continuities tends to be the creator of Bizarro, has been established not to be involved in criminal activity and has never harbored animosity towards Superman, it makes sense why he would only now have created Bizarro to deal with the evil Superman. Except now that Bizarro has gone and run away on his own, Luthor is forced to feign ignorance and be a good liar in telling Superman he has had nothing to do with the clone when questioned about Bizarro by Superman, who listens to his heartbeat to be sure of his friend's honesty. Shortly after confronting Luthor, Superman responds to the regime soldier's distress call, where the apprehension of Toyman has revealed to be also holding Solomon Grundy, who is in a completely different weight class than Hawkgirl. Getting to the scene, Superman and Bizarro come face to face, and the debate over which one is real, the inquiry of where the other one came from, then leads to an action sequence you'd expect, then to a movie reference, and then, as Bizarro flies away confused at being called a Bizarro Superman, to Superman tearing Solomon Grundy's head off for preventing him from following Bizarro. As Grundy is a regenerating zombie, Superman throws his remains to Luthor at Cadmus Labs, and tells him to find a way to turn the zombie into an asset for the regime. Around this part, Brian Bacalado decided to start fleshing Damian into what he will be in the game, by having him go to the Batcave where Alfred has decided to move back into. Because Alfred doesn't give a fuck, and that is something even Damian must respect, along with his words of wisdom in why he remains as Batman's faithful butler in opposing Superman's regime. Later, Damian catches Catwoman, who after quitting the insurgency has gone back to being a cat burglar by stealing diamonds. As Selina is now a relatively neutral party, Damian goes relatively easier on her, and his previous conversation with Alfred along with Selina choosing her words correctly also leads to Damian lowering his guard. I must admit that Baccalato is doing a good job in working with what he has towards the planned end goal here in Damien's case, in not trying to improve his characterization to a more favorable direction, but in making him more humane rather than one-dimensional. And that good job ends here.
I'm not Dick Grayson. This is Damian Wayne.
As Damien was twist revealed in the game's story campaign to be the Injustice Universe's Nightwing, Year 5 is where Brian Baccalato decided to make the transitioning for Damien to go through. In order to do that, Damien went through those previously brought up interactions with Alfred and Selina before Dick Grayson's ghost appears to assist him in confronting an overpowered group of villains, which includes this continuity hiccup because Scarecrow was supposed to be dead in the beginning of Year 1. Allegedly, this was an error and should be seen as a non-canon appearance. If it wasn't for the fact that Scarecrow ends up appearing in both games, as a background character in the first one, and as a playable fighter in the second one. For the first game, it could be a forgivable oversight, as the Arkham stage exists in 2 different universes, one of which has Dr. Crane still alive. But for the second game, it comes across as doubling or tripling down. Anyway, Dick Grayson's ghost makes his return from the ending of Year 3 by possessing Bronze Tiger and defeating the other villains after Damien was overpowered, and gets him a med-evac to Hall of Justice, while also leaving him a Nightwing costume in a gift-wrapped box. And then he regrets doing it so much that he will never appear in the series anymore, after he sees Superman approve this upgrade to his loyal regime asset. Also, Damien tells Superman what Alfred told him, which piles onto Superman's growing opposition in the form of another thing that had to be set up before the events of the video game, called the Joker Underground, which seems to be led by a former GCPD detective Jason Bard. Harley and Batwoman approach the Joker Underground separately on their own, and both give them the same "Kuinka saatanan kyllästyneitä elämiseen te vitun idiootit oikein olette?" This confrontation takes place in issues 15 and 16, and due to the cliffhanger in between, issue 16 opens with a flashback between Selina and Kate debating over what chances Batman's insurgency has after 5 years of losing to Superman's regime. Long story short, Selina is still tired of being on the losing side, and Kate is focused on helping her not retcon at the time of the publication cousin Bruce, while keeping people safe, so also making her leaks better than the CW version of her. Back at the confrontation, Harley and Batman tell Bard and the rest of the Joker Underground that the Joker is the last person they should want to honor with the dedication to their cause. Bard says that they are serious in their revolution, to which Harley and Batman admit to be okay, but in going forward they need to brand themselves better and be less violent and more vocal if they want to oppose Superman and support Batman's side. Unfortunately, this good advice is given to them too late to be enacted, as Superman, who had learned about them invoking the Joker's name, arrives just after Harley and Batman have left. In standing up to the tyrant, Bard and the entire underground ends up getting slaughtered by Superman in an act that I see as his point of no return. By that I mean, Superman has killed and murdered before this in the series, but in most of those cases it has been in fighting against someone else capable of fighting back. Jason Bard and these people were not in the same weight class, and the only crime they did to warrant their execution from the regime high counselor was simply the voicing of their opinion and the mistake of branding themselves after the monster whose place Superman has now taken. Bizarro and Trickster are in Syria, talking about the other Superman, and considering what that Superman has become, it might be better for Bizarro to be the newer and better Superman in replacing him. Trickster offers Bizarro his friendship and support in doing that, and starts by teaching him to cover his mouth with his hands when sneezing in order not to blow walls of a near millennia-old castle. They then fly to a hamburger joint in Israel and continue their conversation, and with Bizarro also revealing how his earliest memories are from a laboratory. Unfortunately, during their lunch, Bizarro throws a hamburger wrappers at them. I assume those are Mossad agents as they are in Israel or some mercenaries, who don't take it kindly to being thrown at with trash. Trickster offers to handle them on his own, non-lethal way, but he misses one, and Bizarro, in trying to protect his friend, kills the merc with a heat blast. And the situation snowballs from there as Trickster points out that Bizarro did what he did in front of eyewitnesses that can report what he did. And so Bizarro, in a reactionary act, does to the witnesses what Superman did to the Joker underground. The only difference being that Superman knew what he was doing, and Trickster has to explain to Bizarro what he did as they fly away. And as they fly away, right after making the decision to be clearer in their actions in the future, Bizarro sneezes and covers his face with both of his hands. He does this as he is flying and carrying Trickster, who apparently was not wearing his anti-gravity boots, so he ended up falling from the air and dies landing on a rocky terrain. While the regime is studying the crime scene they left to recognize its similarity to Joker Underground's crime scene, Bizarro takes the Trickster's remains to the old man in Germany and begs him to fix his friend the same way how he fixed the S-Shield's mirror image. After trying and failing to explain how fixing clothes is not the same thing as reviving the dead, the old man tries to call help over the phone, but apparently Bizarro is smart enough to understand German. The old man's phone call is picked up by Cyborg, and Superman flies over to him, but Bizarro is not there anymore. Instead, he has gone home to his earliest memory, aka to Lex Luthor's private lab, and Luthor is forced to find a polite and smart way to tell Bizarro he is not his father. Lex makes up some bullshit about finding him in the Arctic, and after trying to destroy Bizarro in the guise of running some tests on him, he sends Bizarro to the Fortress of Solitude under the illusion of finding the source of his origins there. Luthor does this because the Flash has also arrived at his lab to talk about a project they have been working on together during the recovery of Barry's leg from when Doomsday landed on it. Speaking of Doomsday, the project that Luthor and Barry have been working on has been turning Doomsday and Solomon Grundy from earlier into brainwashed enforcer tanks to work for Superman's regime. And Doomsday was put into the Fortress of Solitude on remote control, which Luthor puts on search and destroy mode when he sent Bizarro there. So, Doomsday ends up attacking Bizarro in seeing him as Superman, and Superman then shows up when Luthor has to report about Doomsday's activity with the Flash present with him. Luthor has the chance to set Doomsday to kill Superman with the excuse of Doomsday being confused by two targets. But since this version of Lex Luthor was never a supervillain, he decides not to be a murderer by making Doomsday just kill Bizarro, like a murderer. The story of the Injustice Bizarro was that of a tragedy. He came to this world to serve a purpose he never knew, lived a life where he got to experience friendship, and in death is mourned only by his template for not knowing enough about him, along with his creator. Although Bizarro's deeds were limited to misinformed manslaughter, with time and guidance he could have become something that was unfortunately too good for this world. The Rogues hold a memorial service to Weather Wizard and Heatwave at Keystone Saloon, during which Mirror Master and Golden Glider are the only ones present to mourn over their passed away colleagues, as some of them are either locked up or dead. On some level it might as well be a date to the two lonely souls, and as this is not exactly a funeral, I have nothing against what the two have here together. The Flash shows up to the memorial service, and even when Mirror Master and Golden Glider are not initially happy with his presence, Barry is genuinely there to pay his respect, as he and the Rogues always had a professional understanding in their business. So, he has one beer with Scudder and Lisa, without turning them over to the regime. Next up, Harley Quinn goes to see Billy again outside of his foster home and threatens to shoot his friends if he doesn't turn into Shazam. And before moving to what happens after Billy has turned into Shazam, I'm bringing up something that I have been asked to bring up in the previous videos. as Billy is a child with a power to turn into an adult with superpowers. He is living on his free time in a foster home, which begs the question on where are the rest of the Shazam family? It just started coming out in 2013, in the second year of the New 52, when DC was forced to change Shazam's name from Captain Marvel to Shazam. In the change, they also expanded the Shazam family from Mary Marvel and Freddie Freeman to a larger family which was used in David F. Sandberg's 2019 Shazam movie. Considering the timing of the story here, I could understand how the entire new family did not get the chance to be incorporated into Injustice, but Freddy and Mary pre-existed the New 52, so they should have at least some kind of presence here, and an opinion when it comes to Billy's alignment to Superman's regime. Moving on, Harley, after witnessing Superman slaughtering the Joker underground with Batwoman, confronts Shazam about why he is still standing by Superman's side. Unfortunately, as the late Bizarro ended up doing the exact same thing to the Israeli burger joint, Shazam in his wisdom of Solomon believes that Bizarro killed those people, and Harley is not in the mood to be Ichika Mizuhara anymore to Billy's Tomoya Mizuhara. Later that day, I assume, Superman goes to confront Alfred at the Wayne Manor about how he is living out there in the open as an agent to Batman's insurgency, and about what he told to Damian last time they spoke. Superman in this conversation tries to politely, while looking intimidating, to ask where Batman is hiding, and Alfred dodges the questions by not giving a bit to a Khan. As for Batman, he is meeting with Hawkman, who wishes to join the insurgency for the previously mentioned obvious reasons. Issue 23 opens with Sinestro observing as Superman lets someone walk out of the regime's temporary Supermax in San Francisco to do his dirty work, and proudly approving what he is doing. Meanwhile, Bruce has remotely thrown a birthday surprise to Alfred, not sure if he got the date right since Alfred has kept it as a secret long enough that it has eventually turned into a game. Even Kate and Barbara have called Alfred to congratulate him. During a call from Alaska, Bruce shares with Alfred his doubts on what if the insurgency's cause is being led by his own stubbornness. Superman has managed to make the world into a somewhat better place, at the price of murder, whereas Batman's losing battle against the regime has only managed to get Bruce left with just Kate, Barbara and Alfred, after half of the rogues he hired end up dead and Selina walked out on him. Alfred tells Bruce that he has to keep the insurgency running because, I'm paraphrasing this because it should have been written like this, because if he doesn't oppose Superman in his tyrannical, murderous ways, then who else will? And this was their last conversation, because sometime later when Alfred is about to turn in for the night, he gets an intruder alert from the Batcave, and when responding to it, the intruder is identified as one of the most dangerous and frightening Batman villains, that when Batman the Animated Series adapted his debut story, the censors replaced him with Scarecrow. Gotham made him a quirky killer for hire. Birds of Prey and the unnecessary long subtitle including Harley Quinn nerfed him into a masochistic pervert, and the CW's Batwoman turned him into Crobumpulous Michael from Rick and Morty.
Oh boy, here I go killing again.
Because Victor Zsasz is that evil, dangerous, and unpredictable monster of a Batman villain that most media distributors need to either change him to something else or replace him with someone else. The fact that he lives to kill and marks all of his skills on his skin is also not appropriate to be used in cartoons aimed for children. As a serial killer, Zsasz also has unpredictable behavior pattern that most criminologists have been unable to profile. And that unpredictability is why Superman obviously let him loose to do his dirty work in coercing Alfred into revealing where Batman is hiding. When faced against in combat, Zsasz's fighting style is also best described as improvised, that even the most talented fighters would take time to adapt in order to overpower, meaning that in Alfred's case, Zsasz is eventually able to overpower him, and the old, faithful butler takes the secret of his master's location to the grave, and Damian is left to find his bled-out remains. Alfred's death in Zaz's hands is recognized on every side as a tragedy, with the fact that Hal Jordan had delivered Zaz to the regime's Supermax prison raising the suspicions that Superman brushes aside by telling his people that if Batman is drawn out by this, then he should be taken down. This tragedy pushes the Flash and Cyborg to begin questioning the regime's agenda. As the scene is set after a murder, we next see Zaz on the run on a dark, stormy night, stealing a vehicle that eventually gets rammed into by the Batmobile, from which Batman emerges as a dark and expressionless, shadowy figure to tell us and Zaz what mood he is on. Catching Zaz down in a dark alley, Batman incapacitates him by throwing 2 batarangs to cut his Achilles tendons, and then lands a kick on the murderer before starting to demand who sent him. This shows that while Bruce is in mourning over his father figure, he is still capable of keeping his emotions in check and focus on the bigger picture. Unfortunately, in realizing that, Zaz recognizes it as an exploitable weakness defeated by taunting and delaying with the knowledge that Batman is not really going to kill him. Unfortunately, Damian, who shows up as a Nightwing, does not have that problem, and even their shared wanting of revenge for Alfred is exactly what Superman wants to cover his tracks. Issue 25 mostly covers Batman accusing Superman of sending Zaz to kill Alfred to bring him out of hiding, and wanting Damian to kill Zaz to cover his tracks, while Superman deflects Batman's accusations like the despot he has developed into, before brushing Bruce aside and letting Damian go kill Zaz. But Bruce is able to take a saved 5U93R pill to make the issue end with him holding Superman in a headlock and asking Damian if he should start killing with Superman to end their 5-year war. But the raised by assassin's son is able to call out his father's bluff just before the Flash arrives to stand in the middle, with Wonder Woman and Yellow Lantern right behind him. To delay his inevitable capture, Batman calls out his former allies' complicity to Alfred's murder, as well as his belief that they would kill him for resisting, with only Barry and Hal repulsed, and Diana standing her ground as a warrior on a war zone. Ultimately, Zaz reminding of his presence causes another fight sequence, where Batman manages to quickly put Hal in a trash can, and then confronts Diana for enabling Superman's corruption for such selfish motivations that the yandere denies by acting like a tsundere. Then they both manage to knock him out when his back is turned, but as the only one with some integrity left in the regime, the Flash takes Batman away from them on the same grounds that Superman let Batman go after Renee Montoya died in year 4, to give Alfred a proper burial, before leaving to face the consequences for his actions. Bruce asks Barry to do away with the darkest timeline they are in by using the Speed Force to go back in time to stop the Joker from killing Lois and destroying Metropolis. Not just because of Alfred, but for everyone they have lost, and as I have kept saying since my Superman 1978 and Man of Steel comparative review, because Superman is not Clark Kent anymore. And as they are now in a darkest timeline, whatever would come out of changing the past couldn't be worse than where they are now. So Barry promises to think about it. Later, when Bruce is getting ready for Alfred's funeral, Barbara catches him in the possession of some of Alfred's personal items, including his birth certificate, giving the family the final closure into when the Old Faithful's birthday was. The consequences behind Barry's actions begin with a flashback as a framing device showing how he broke the news about Superman murdering the Joker to Iris West, and promising her that he will be there to keep Superman from becoming exactly what he is now in the present day, giving an aggressive, physical punishment to Barry for his betrayal in letting Batman escape. As Wonder Woman and Cyborg come to intervene, Barry uses the distraction to break free from Superman's grasp and makes his case in saving Bruce out of the respect and to honor Alfred's memory, which Superman does not accept as an excuse as he tries to attack him again. Barry manages to just barely dodge it, but not perfectly as Superman's fist makes a minimal impact that would have otherwise killed Barry as Superman's latest victim. This causes Barry to go AWOL from the regime to meet up with Iris, and the reunion between them shows that Barry has not kept his word from 5 years ago, as Iris pushes him aside and tells Barry to stay away from her.
Men, we don't know what we did.
Rejected, Barry does what any man in his position would do and heads to a bar, where a bartender resembling Captain Cold serves and tells that the establishment has a 0% tolerance to politics and religion, so Barry can't get a people on the street perspective on how the regime is seen as. Before Barry manages to finish his drink, he sees commotion in the distance and races to the scene as the Flash, to find Iris, David Singh and James Forrest confronted by King Shark and Girder working with regime stormtroopers. They are accused of being a part of Batman's insurgency, and while trying to defuse the situation, Barry accidentally ends up killing King Shark when trying to protect Iris, who along with everyone else in response to his action would rather surrender in seeing the Flash as no better than Superman. This causes Barry to take her elsewhere to have the conversation they need to have, and Iris reveals that she was there in Australia 5 years ago and saw as the Flash just watched Superman and Wonder Woman push down and cripple Galaxor, the local hero opposing/criticizing the regime. By doing nothing, Barry broke his promise to Iris and whatever relationship they could have had together. Which should create a paradox in how did their grandson Bart ever get born in the future, if Barry and Iris broke up before conceiving his mother. Speaking of the Flash family, Year 5 did come out when the New 52 was still active, and Wally West had not returned from the Speed Force in the 2016 DC Rebirth special. Meaning that it is extremely convenient that we don't have Wally West present here in Injustice, because his support for the death penalty and seeing Dick Grayson as his best friend would have put him automatically on the insurgency's side. Maybe Iris is put there to be in his place. Anyway, with Iris's words, Barry decides to accept that he has gone past the point of no return, and chooses as his punishment for that not to go back in time to change the world. He so commits to Superman's regime in taking Iris in, and justifies it to Batman as this being the world they deserve. Not much happens in issue 29. Notable things to mention are that the artist got Barbara and Kate mixed up in this scene where Bruce sends a message to Hawkman in space. Hal and Sinestro bicker about who let Victor Zsasz escape, and Superman with Shazam, Hawker and Wonder Woman coerce Black Adam to make Kahndaq an ally to the regime. It is issue 30 where Bruce, Barbara and Kate decide to use Superman's massacre of the Joker Underground against the regime by planning to capture Cyborg, who should have the video evidence of the massacre in his internal server's database. As they move in, Hawkman travels to confront Mongul in Not War World for the last piece of kryptonite left in the Injustice Unit timeline, and this fight scene would probably look good if it was animated. Superman is busy doing to Aquaman what he did to Black Adam, while Batman, Batgirl and Batwoman cause a blackout in Washington DC around the Hall of Justice before they jump in to engage with Cyborg and Hawkgirl. While they fight to overpower them, Superman approaches a former Teen Titans member whose appearance would make Lin Cara probably jizz his pants briefly, before starting to rant about how this is the only appearance Danny Chase has made after his death in 1992. The New 52 version doesn't count, as that version didn't even get a proper page on dc.fandom.com/wiki. Anyway, Danny is used to take Superman to, I assume that is supposed to be Azarath, to talk Raven into coming to fight for the regime against those who manipulated Trigon into fighting Mxyzptlk, aka Batman's insurgency, because for some reason Raven has too deep daddy issues. Superman eventually returns to the Hall of Justice by the time Batman and Batwoman have managed to overpower Hawkgirl and Cyborg. Luckily, Hawkman arrives just as soon after him with a kryptonite mace, which apparently was not what Batman had asked him of, but Qatar's presence provides him and Batwoman with the opportunity to take Cyborg with them. Hawkman's last stand before his next reincarnation is to beat Superman until his health is on critical, assert his dominance to Hawkgirl, the Tane Marion Way, and then get beaten to death by Superman after the Flash takes away his kryptonite mace. Qatar's sacrifice does still buy time for Batman, Batgirl and Batwoman to get Cyborg away and be hacked into, as the mace's effects force the regime to focus on Superman's damages. They take Victor to Luthor's lab under the irradiated ruins of Metropolis, where the former Oracle begins to hack into Cyborg's database and find the evidence of how Superman slaughtered the Joker underground. Unfortunately, they try to broadcast it for the world to see the same way I skipped over in year 1, aka by first trying to address their audience before showing the discriminating footage. Raven is so able to arrive at the 11th hour and use black magic to cause a global blackout to jam the broadcast before it gets to the money shot, and Cyborg gets to reboot himself, forcing Batman, Batgirl and Batwoman to retreat with Batgirl's equipment fried and the evidence destroyed. They should have just uploaded it to Twitter, YouTube, Instagram and every video sharing platform like how Superman did it with Batman's secret identity, so it would have remained on the internet even after the blackout has passed. Especially when Superman orders Cyborg to delete his entire database after he has been taken back to the Hall of Justice. Running out of options, Batman meets up with Luthor after some time, and reveals that the Batcave still has some rainy day kryptonite hidden as one of his original countermeasures that could be used as the last straw. It is unfortunately protected by a safeguard that requires the DNA of his former allies who are now either dead or on Superman's side. Looking at Bizarro's stored remains, Luthor gets an epiphany that leads to the first direct connection leading to the events of the first video game. At this point of year 5, Batman's insurgency begins to move towards bringing the Parallel World's Justice League members over to help us in the game. Couple of things before we move on to how they do it. First off, in the year 4 video I showcased this map of the DC multiverse as it was at the time when the year 5 was coming out. Even after it got flipped turned upside down for Dark Knight's Metal and Dark Knight's Death Metal, Injustice has never been given an official designation as an alternate universe coexisting with the other 52 universes, even when DC Multiverse has parallel Earths without established histories and inhabitants. This is why I have a hard time calling this the Injustice universe, and prefer to rather call it a different timeline. And bringing the other Justice League over from a parallel world makes it that much harder. Second of all, in order to bring this other Justice League over from a parallel Earth, Batman and Luthor talk about needing Speed Force energy from the Flash, which Luthor has been siphoning for something else but are going to use it for this, and a mother box as a transport device to reconfigure it. I'll come back to this shortly. In order to get a mother box, they need to break into a regime armory, because I guess Highfather took away the one Batman used to reach out to him in year 4. In order to break in there, Batman approaches Slade Wilson, also known as Deathstroke the Terminator, who has been forced into retirement that he is more than happy to come out of and go get the mother box. In doing this, Slade is presented as a seasoned professional, who according to himself could have taken down Batman's insurgency if Superman had hired him for the job. No doubt he could have done that. Beware of an old man in a profession where one usually dies young. Deathstroke is one of those old men. Slade manages to find a mother box, but while being able to fight against a small army of regime stormtroopers and Metamorpho, he is eventually surprise attacked and captured by Cyborg and Raven. He is introduced in the game by being held captive by those two, so this was to be expected. And this brings us back to my second point. Deathstroke failed to bring the mother box to Batman, but as a consolation prize, he managed to send a 3D schematic of the mother box held in the regime's stronghold. Now we are supposed to believe that even with the combined IQ of these two men, they are going to build a man-made version of a sentient piece of alien technology from the fourth world. I recognize that this is comic book logic, and the plot demands for them to succeed in it, but saying it out loud like this sounds as ridiculous as building a smartphone out of twigs, pebbles, and leaves glued together. I'll go over the few remaining loose ends tied up in the annual issue before moving on to the final events leading to the video game story campaign. The annual issue covers 3 stories, with the first one establishing how Harley meets and takes over another chapter of the Joker underground that has been hiding in Arkham Asylum after Superman killed the other chapter earlier in the year. Also, something worth mentioning is that in Year 4 annual, Superman began to wear the Regime High Counselor suit, which along with Hal becoming a Yellow Lantern in Year 2, is one of the few instances where the characters in the Injustice timeline switch their looks from this to this. And in this story, Harley also switches her look from a red and black-haired revealing jester to a blonde biker chick, who will be the main point of view character in the Ground Zero comic retelling the video game story. The second story in the annual opens with the Wayne Manor being poorly burned down by Damian, whose Nightwing costume has also been turned into what it looks like in the game, aka by switching the blue to red. The fire is what causes the Wayne Manor to be locked down and contained by the regime, so they won't let Batman come back to take anything from the Batcave and to make way for those 2 stages in the game. And another thing that happens in this story is that Ares comes back from his eternal torment on Apocalypse. Because apparently Darkseid is currently busy fighting Orion, who laid a siege to Apocalypse. Ares was freed from the slave pits with other prisoners there. And as Zeus took the other Greek gods away from Earth, the god of war really doesn't have anywhere else to go but crawl his way back to Superman's regime. Because Batman's side is visibly on the losing side from everyone's point of view at this point. And the third story rushes to get a lot of things done, like how Superman plans to make it official that he is the Regime High Counselor by creating the One Earth government, because he is not going to hide the fact that he is a dictator anymore. Notice how I took the tyrannical out from ahead of the dictator. This is because he is actually smart enough to know that he can't just tell the humanity to bend over and bow before him like in some Silver Age super dickery story. Instead, Superman decides to rebuild Metropolis back and beyond its former glory with the help of Ray Palmer, aka the Atom, and Jefferson Pierce, aka Black Lightning, who we have not seen since Year 1. I can't be sure if it was Tom Taylor or Brian Baccalado who forgot that Black Lightning was also on Batman's side and didn't use him at all after Year 1 and before now. Anyway, Palmer's atom technology and Pierce's electric powers are used to convert the radiation in Metropolis ruins into sustainable energy to be used for the rebuilding. I am not an engineer or scientist, so I'm just going to take their word and accept the results. Once the radioactivity of Metropolis has been taken care of, the regime hires every construction crew within the 1,000-mile radius as well as Atom Smasher and Giganta, with the rebuilding process taking what I can assume to be the remainder of the year in making Year 5 a year-long event, at the end of which Superman officially declares himself as the High Counselor of the One Earth government. And the annual issue ends with Batman coming to visit Jefferson in his home, where Jefferson's absence in between Year 1 and Year 5 is explained as him seeing Batman's losing streak in making him use tactics almost as questionable as Superman. Just because Batman doesn't kill doesn't mean he hasn't heard. And as Jefferson bluntly puts it out in this panel, Batman's insurgency is a lost cause. In another world, Clark Kent breaks the news of his wife Lois' pregnancy to his parents, and that they are going to name their son after his grandfathers, Jonathan Kent and Samuel Lane. On the same glorious day, a large assembly of friends and family has gathered at the Wayne Manor to celebrate the 75th birthday of Alfred Thaddeus Crane Pennyworth. It was the creator's idea that Alfred was turning 75, while Damian Wayne picked the date, which after Alfred saying they got wrong. Oliver Queen suggests that they use Diana's lasso to make the Old Faithful spill the beans. The party then starts after Clark Kent shows up fashionably late. Oliver Queen and Dinah Lance play in the pool with Kate Kane and Renee Montoya, who later gets out to yell at her boss Jim Gordon about how to use a grill. While Alfred and the boys have a food fight with his inaccurate birthday cake, Bruce congratulates Clark for what he and Lois will be going through in the future. Around the same time, the villainous Lex Luthor has gathered around a league of his own to commit coordinated attacks around Metropolis, which alerts the Justice League to respond as the Titans are ambushed while monitoring the situation from the Watchtower. Recognizing a certain absence among the villains Luthor has recruited into his Injustice League, Batman goes to Arkham in order to make personally sure that the Joker is still there. The Clown Prince of Crime is not there, but in Metropolis like everyone else, transporting a weapon of mass destruction along with his aid camp on the street level below the superpowered beings battling above them. As they make their way to a proper ground zero under Superman's statue in Heroes Park, the Joker multitasks in making Harley carry the bomb while keeping her attention away from independent thoughts and anticipating that Batman will show up right on time. As the Joker believes in the philosophy of bros before hoes, he slaps Harley away to leave him in the company of his best friend.
I'm your best friend.
As Harley is about to exit the park, she sees the heroes charging at the location of B-Man and Mr. J, which causes her to turn around and run back to see everyone disappear in a bright flash of light. At the Hall of Justice, Catwoman approaches Superman, willing to tell him where Batman is hiding in exchange for their war ending without any more bloodshed and without Bruce getting hurt. Because again, unlike Tom King's Catwoman, this version of Selina genuinely loves Bruce. Under the Pacific lead mines of Northwest Alaska, Batman and Luthor have managed to find a proper parallel world with the version of a Justice League as it was 5 years ago in their world. See the conflict they are in the middle of. It is clear that they need to wait for the heroes to defeat the villains they are fighting before pulling them over to their world. And of course it is when they have to wait when Superman breaks into their bunker and need to use their mother box to open a boom tube to send Luthor away so his status as a double agent won't get exposed to Superman. In his violent entrance, Superman not only aggressively calls out for Batman to show himself, but also tears the bunker apart as he advances, causing damage to their equipment. This forces Batman to step forward and begin to buy time for Batgirl and Batwoman to manually operate the device to pull the other Justice League over to their world. And seeing the other world's Joker have his hands on a nuclear bomb, Barbara and Kate realize that they are forced to pull the Joker along with the Justice League over as a way to disconnect his trigger from the bomb. And the good news just keep on coming as the transporter's damage is even more severe than they realized, forcing them to try fix it while Batman is cornered by Superman, Wonder Woman and Hal Jordan. They say the best way to tell a convincing lie is to tell the truth, and so Batman admits his ignorance on if his resistance was worth it, trying to stay true to himself as Superman embraced the worst sides of humanity by forcing peace, and stealing the humanity's freedom in a conversation they should have had a long time ago. Brought to his knees, Batman expresses his condolences for what the Joker did to Superman, and tries to remind Superman of who he once was in believing that murdering the Joker was wrong with the ripple effect caused by it. Batman brings up everything Superman has done out of character when compared to who he once was in naming the friends they have lost with their blood on Superman's hands as the price of his world peace, with the Justice League being perverted into his personal death squad. When bringing up his parents in how ashamed they must feel, in how this couldn't have been what Jor-El envisioned when he sent Superman to Earth as a baby who grew up to become an invading conqueror. It is then when Superman sees through the charade Bruce is putting and flies deeper into the bunker. On Barbara's and Kate's end, they have managed to fix the transporter with Kate keeping the machine in one piece, while Barbara presses the button as Superman charges into the room they are in. The transporter turns on, activating a force field as Superman fires his heat vision at Batwoman in trying to stop what he cannot understand is happening and...
Once there were trees full of birds, meadowlands vibrant with flowers. Clouds came and covered the sun. The breath of a baleful unease, turning to ashes, flowers in the fields silenced the birds in the trees. Hidden so deep in veils of deceit, imprisoned in twisting spells, are we the plaything of fiends, or merely the dreams that we're telling ourselves? Strive till the phantoms are broken. Fight till the battle is done. The squadrons of night can't conquer the day, nor shadows extinguish the sun. Stories of danger, fearless attack, specters of plague and pain. All of these ghosts of our own delusions come back, and we'll be haunted again, haunted again. For though the storms are rovering past, though the thunder's rage is quiet and at last, while these nightmares late meet down in the wrecks here to mourn, here to mourn. The night has left us crippled with grief as we strive to keep alive our belief that a loss so great, it clouds